Welcome, dear traveler, to a journey across time and sea. Tonight we sail back more than 1,000 years, to the age of the Vikings, to the mist-covered waters of the North Sea, and the legendary voyages of a man whose name still echoes through history. His name was Ragnar Lothbrok. But before we begin, let yourself settle. Feel the gentle rocking of the waves beneath you, the cool night air, the distant call of seabirds. You are safe here, aboard this longship as we drift through the stories of old. Take a deep breath and let it out slowly. Tonight's tale is one of adventure, of courage, of the restless spirit of the Norse people. But it is also a story meant to carry you gently into the realm of dreams. So close your eyes if you haven't already, and let the rhythm of the ocean carry you back to the 9th century, to the cold shores of Scandinavia, where our story begins. In the cold lands of Denmark and Sweden, where the forests meet the sea, there lived many warriors, many raiders, many kings. But few names have traveled through the centuries quite like Ragnar Lothbrok. The truth about Ragnar is complicated. Like many figures from the distant past, the line between the man and the myth has blurred over time. What we know comes from sources written long after his death. The sagas, the chronicles, the poems passed down through generations around flickering fires. Some historians believe Ragnar was a real person, a powerful Viking chieftain who lived in the 9th century. Others think he might be a composite, a collection of several warriors' deeds, woven together into one legendary figure. But tonight, we are not concerned with absolute certainty. We are here to explore the stories, the voyages, the adventures that were told about this remarkable figure. Whether one man or many, the tales of Ragnar Lothbrok capture something essential about the Viking spirit. The name itself tells us something. Lothbrok, or Lothbrok in Old Norse, means hairy breeches or shaggy pants. According to legend, Ragnar earned this unusual nickname during one of his early adventures. The story goes that Ragnar was courting a young woman, a shield maiden of great beauty and skill. But her father, suspicious of young men and their intentions, placed a challenge before any suitor. The woman was guarded by a serpent, a great snake that coiled around her dwelling. To protect himself from the serpent's fangs, Ragnar boiled a pair of leather trousers in pitch and tar. He wore these stiff, shaggy breeches as armor. When he approached the serpent, its teeth could not penetrate the hardened leather. Ragnar slew the beast and won his bride. From that day forward, he was known as Lothbrok. Whether this tale is true, we cannot know. But it shows us something about how the Vikings thought. Cleverness was as valued as strength, preparation as important as courage, and a memorable nickname could last forever. To understand Ragnar's voyages, we must first understand the world he sailed in. The 8th and 9th centuries were a time of great change in Northern Europe. The Vikings, the Norse people of Scandinavia, were expanding outward. Their reasons were many. Some sought land. The fjords and valleys of Norway, Denmark, and Sweden could only support so many people. Younger sons, those who would not inherit, looked across the seas for new territories. Some sought wealth. The monasteries of Britain and Ireland held treasures, gold, silver, precious books and artifacts. And they were poorly defended. To the Vikings, these were opportunities. Some sought glory. In Norse culture, reputation was everything. A man's name, his deeds, these would outlive his body. To die in battle, to be remembered in saga and song, this was the highest honor. And some, perhaps, simply sought the horizon. The Vikings were exceptional sailors. Their longships, sleek and swift, could navigate both open ocean and shallow rivers. They could beach on any shore. They were technological marvels of their time. Imagine these ships now. Long and narrow, perhaps 25 meters from bow to stern. The hull made of overlapping oak planks. Flexible enough to ride the waves. Strong enough to survive the fierce North Sea storms. A single mast rises from the center. When the wind is favorable, a large square sail, often striped in red and white, billows out. The ship surges forward. When the wind fails, rows of oars emerge from the sides. 30 men or more, rowing in rhythm, their breath creating clouds in the cold air. At the prow, a carved dragon head. Or perhaps a serpent. These fierce figureheads were meant to frighten both enemies and evil spirits. And on board, warriors, traders, adventurers, each with their own reasons for leaving home. Each trusting their lives to the skill of their captain and the mercy of the sea. This was Ragnar's world. A world where the sea was both highway and barrier. Where distant lands promised both danger and reward. Where a man with courage, cunning, and a fast ship could change his fate. The early Viking raids began in the late 700s. The most famous, the raid on Lindisfarne, occurred in 793 AD. This was before Ragnar's time, but it set the pattern for what was to come. By the time Ragnar came to prominence, likely in the 840s or 850s, Viking raids were well established. But Ragnar, according to the sagas, was different, more ambitious, more daring. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, a historical record kept by English monks, mentions several Viking leaders during this period. While Ragnar's name does not appear directly, some scholars believe references to a Ragnar or Reginhirus might refer to him. What we do know is that a massive Viking fleet raided Paris in 845 AD. This fleet was said to be led by a chieftain named Reginhirus. The raid was devastating. The Vikings sailed up the Seine River, their ships appearing like a forest of masts, and laid siege to the city. The Frankish king, Charles the Bald, eventually paid a huge ransom, 7,000 pounds of silver and gold. The Vikings took the treasure and departed. But the message was clear. No city was safe. No river too far inland. Many believe this Reginhirus was Ragnar Lothbrok. The timeline fits. The ambition matches the legend. And the success of the raid, the sheer audacity of it, seems worthy of a man who would become legendary. But let us not race ahead. Let us imagine instead the preparations for such a voyage. Picture a coastal village in Denmark. Late spring. The ice has melted. The seas are calmer. This is the sailing season. Ragnar stands on the shore, watching his men load the ships. Provisions, weapons, spare sails and ropes. Everything must be carefully calculated. Too much weight and the ship sits low in the water. Too little and they may starve before reaching their goal. The ships themselves have been inspected. Every plank, every join. The flexibility of the hull is what allows these ships to survive storms that would break rigid vessels apart. But that flexibility requires perfect construction. The crew gathers. These are not just warriors. Many are farmers, craftsmen, men who will return to their fields when autumn comes. But for now, they are raiders, adventurers, brothers in arms. Ragnar addresses them. His voice carries across the beach. He speaks of glory, a wealth, of the lands across the sea. But he also speaks honestly of danger. Not all will return. The sea is unpredictable. Battle is chaos. But those who survive, those who fight well, their names will be remembered. The men roar their approval. Shields clash against shields. The sound echoes off the nearby cliffs. And then, they embark. One by one, the longships are pushed into the surf. Men scramble aboard. Oars are set. And slowly, the fleet turns westward, toward the open sea. This is how legends begin. Not with certainty, but with a single decision. To leave the shore. To trust the ship. To seek what lies beyond the horizon. The North Sea in spring is still cold. The swells roll beneath the ships, sometimes gentle, sometimes threatening. Weather can change in minutes. Clear skies can become driving rain. Calm seas can transform into walls of water. But the Vikings knew these waters. They had been crossing them for generations. They understood the rhythms of wind and current. They read the sky, the behavior of birds, the color of the water. Navigation without compasses, without maps as we know them, required different skills. The Vikings used something called a sunstone, likely a type of crystal that could locate the sun even through clouds by polarizing light. They watched the stars at night. They memorized landmarks along coasts. And they trusted their ships. The longship design was perfect for these waters. The shallow draft meant they could approach almost any coastline. The flexibility of the hull absorbed the impact of waves. And the ships were fast. Faster than anything else on the water at that time. Imagine being aboard one of these vessels. The constant motion, the creak of wood, the splash of waves against the hull, the rhythmic sound of oars when the wind fails, the snap of the sail when a good wind rises. There is no shelter from the elements. Men huddle beneath cloaks when rain comes. They bail water constantly, it always finds a way in. They eat cold food, dried fish, hard bread, cheese. Fresh water is carefully rationed. At night, if they are far from shore, they might lower the sail and drift. Men take turns on watch. The sea at night is vast. The stars wheel overhead. The same constellations that guided their fathers and grandfathers. Sometimes they sleep, curled against the side of the ship, rocked by the endless motion of the waves. It is not comfortable, but exhaustion makes sleep possible anywhere. And Ragnar, as the leader, sleeps least of all. He watches the horizon, checks the weather, ensures his men remain in good spirits. A good captain is always aware, always present. His confidence reassures the crew. Days pass, perhaps a week, perhaps less if the winds are favorable. And then, a call from the lookout. The coast of Britain appears as a dark line on the horizon. The men stir. Weapons are checked. This is what they came for. The coast of Northumbria. Dramatic. Cliffs rise from the sea. But the Vikings know where to look. River mouths. Beaches. Places where ships can land safely. The longships glide toward shore. As they enter shallower water, the oars are shipped. Men jump into the surf, waist deep in cold water. Together they pull the ships onto the beach. The ships are light enough, designed for exactly this. No dock needed. No harbor. Any beach will do. Once ashore, the transformation begins. These are no longer just sailors. They are raiders now. Warriors. Armor is donned. Mail shirts for those wealthy enough to afford them. Most wear leather, or simply thick woolen tunics. Helmets, contrary to popular myth, have no horns. They are simple, practical, designed to deflect blows. Weapons are readied. The most common is the axe. Not the enormous double-headed axes of fantasy, but single-bladed axes. Practical tools that double as weapons. Many also carry swords, if they can afford them. Swords are valuable, often given names, passed down through families. A good sword might be worth as much as a farm. Shields are round, made of wood, painted with geometric designs. A metal boss in the center protects the hand. These shields are not just for defense. In close combat, they become weapons, used to bash, to push, to create space for the axe or sword to strike. And so, armed and ready, Ragnar's men move inland. Their targets are often monasteries. Not out of religious hatred, though the Norse are not Christian, but because monasteries are wealthy and undefended. The monks believe in peace, in turning the other cheek. They are scholars, scribes, men of prayer, not warriors. The Vikings come upon such a place. Stone buildings, a church, smaller structures where the monks live and work, gardens, livestock. The monks hear the Vikings coming. Some try to hide. Some pray. Some simply wait, accepting their fate with faith. The raid is swift, brutal. The Vikings take anything valuable. Gold chalices, silver candlesticks, illuminated manuscripts, though these are valued more for their decorated covers than their contents. Food, animals, anything that can be carried or driven back to the ships. Sometimes prisoners are taken. Monks who might be ransomed. Young people who might be sold as slaves in distant markets. This is a harsh reality of the Viking Age. A reality we must acknowledge, even in a story meant for sleep. But it is also important to understand context. This was not unique to Vikings. Slavery existed throughout medieval Europe. Warfare was brutal everywhere. The Vikings were neither uniquely cruel nor uniquely merciful. They were people of their time. And in their own minds, they were not villains. They were providing for their families, winning glory, following their own codes of honor. The sagas speak of bravery, of loyalty, of keeping one's word. These values were real to them, even if their actions seem harsh to modern eyes. After a successful raid, the Vikings return to their ships, loaded with plunder. Perhaps they have lost men. Battle always carries that risk. The wounded are tended to. The dead, if possible, are brought back for proper burial. Or they might be buried at sea, with weapons and honor. The journey home carries a different feeling. There is satisfaction, relief, anticipation of the welcome they will receive. The silver and gold they carry will make them wealthy by the standards of their homeland. The stories they tell will add to their reputations. But the sea does not care about human success or failure. The voyage home carries the same dangers as the voyage out. Storms, accidents, the constant work of sailing. Ragnar stands at the stern of his ship. The coast of Britain recedes behind them. The open sea ahead. He has done what he set out to do. Led his men to wealth and back. Most will see their homes again. But is this enough? For some men, one successful raid might be sufficient. They can return to their farms, build better houses, buy more land, live comfortably. But Ragnar, if the sagas are to be believed, was not content with enough. He was ambitious, restless, always thinking of the next voyage, the next challenge. This is what separates the remembered from the forgotten. As the ships sail north, Ragnar plans bigger raids, more ships, distant lands. His reputation is growing. More men will want to sail with him. More jarls and chiefs will respect him. Perhaps, he thinks, he could even be a king. But these are thoughts for later. For now, there is only the sea, the rhythm of the waves, the creak of the ship, the tired satisfaction of men who have survived another voyage. The sun sets behind them, painting the western sky in shades of red and gold. The water darkens, stars begin to appear, and the longships sail on, through the night, toward home. Years pass. Ragnar's fame grows. He is no longer a young warrior seeking to make his name. He is established, respected. Some sagas say he has become a king, though of what exactly is unclear. Perhaps a region of Denmark. Perhaps a coalition of jarls who acknowledge his leadership. But fame and comfort have not diminished his ambition. If anything, they have fed it. Small raids on coastal monasteries are no longer enough. Ragnar dreams of something greater, something that will ensure his name lives forever. He hears tales of great cities to the south, the Frankish kingdoms, powerful, defended by armies, but also vulnerable in ways they do not realize. The Franks have castles, walled cities, organized military forces. On land, in open battle, they would crush any Viking force. But the Vikings do not fight that way. They move by sea and river. They strike where they are not expected. They avoid pitched battles unless the odds are overwhelmingly in their favor. And Ragnar has learned that the Seine River, which flows through the heart of Francia, is navigable by longships. This river leads directly to Paris, the great city, the seat of Frankish power. This becomes his new obsession. Paris. The city itself is important, but more than that, the audacity of attacking it, of sailing hundreds of miles up a river into the heart of enemy territory, of demanding tribute from one of the most powerful kingdoms in Europe. This is the kind of deed that becomes legend. But such an expedition requires preparation, ships, hundreds of warriors, supplies for a long journey. This is not a quick coastal raid. This is a campaign. Ragnar sends word throughout the Norse lands. He is gathering a fleet, the greatest fleet ever assembled. The target, though he does not say it openly at first, is Paris itself. Warriors come, young men seeking glory, experienced raiders, other jarls and chiefs who see opportunity. Perhaps they do not all trust each other. Perhaps there are rivalries. But all recognize that this is a chance to be part of something extraordinary. Through the winter, preparations continue. Ships are built or repaired. Weapons are forged. Supplies are gathered. And Ragnar plans. He studies what information he can gather about the Seine, about Paris, about the Frankish defenses. When spring comes, the fleet assembles. The sagas speak of 120 ships. Whether this number is accurate, we cannot know. But it was certainly a massive force. Thousands of men. The largest Viking expedition yet attempted. And at its head, Ragnar Lothbrok, now middle-aged, experienced, confident, ready for his greatest voyage yet. The fleet departs from the coast of Denmark. But this time, they do not head directly across the North Sea. Instead, they sail along the coast, past the lands of the Frisians, around the southern coast of Britain if needed, until they reach the mouth of the Seine. It is early spring of 845 AD. The river is high with snowmelt. The current is strong, but the Vikings are used to rowing against currents. This is what their ships are designed for. The fleet enters the river. The sight must have been extraordinary. More than 100 longships, one after another, dragon prows and serpent figureheads, shields hung along the sides, the oars rising and falling in unison. Word spreads ahead of them. Riders gallop to Paris with warnings. The Vikings are coming. A massive fleet, the greatest force anyone has seen. King Charles, known to history as Charles the Bald, is in Paris. He receives the news with alarm. The Vikings have raided before. Coastal areas, river settlements. But never has such a force come so far inland. Charles begins organizing his defense. He calls up his armies, sends messengers to his vassals, orders fortifications strengthened. Paris must be defended. The dignity of his kingdom demands it. But marshalling an army takes time, and the Vikings are moving fast. As Ragnar's fleet rows up the Seine, they encounter villages along the banks. Most of these are undefended. The Vikings stop to raid, to gather supplies, to send a message. They are not just passing through. They are conquering, at least temporarily, everything along their path. Some settlements try to resist. Small bands of local warriors, poorly equipped, poorly organized. The Vikings brush them aside easily. The Norse warriors are professionals. They have been fighting since childhood. They are equipped with the best weapons and armor they can afford, and they fight as a coordinated unit. Other settlements surrender immediately, offering food and treasure in exchange for being spared. Ragnar, practical as well as fierce, often accepts. Why waste time and men on destruction when tribute will do? The goal is Paris. Everything else is secondary. Days pass. The fleet moves steadily upriver. The landscape changes. Gentler. More cultivated. This is the heart of Francia. Farmland. Villages. The occasional fortress on a hilltop. And then, at last, Paris comes into view. The Paris of 845 is not the grand city of later centuries. It is much smaller. The main settlement sits on an island in the Seine, the Isle de la Cite. There are also suburbs on both banks. Perhaps a few thousand people in total, but it is well defended. Stone walls, fortified gates, and most importantly, bridges. 2 bridges cross the Seine, connecting the island to the north and south banks. These bridges can be blocked, defended. They control access to the river. King Charles has positioned his army. Frankish soldiers line the walls. Guard the bridges. The plan is clear. Hold the bridges. Prevent the Vikings from passing. Force them to attack fortified positions, where the Franks have the advantage. Ragnar surveys the situation. He cannot sail past. The bridges block the way. He cannot easily storm the walls, not without massive casualties. A prolonged siege? Possible. But his men are raiders, not besiegers. They will grow restless. And Charles's army is growing larger as more vassals arrive. This is the moment where Ragnar's cunning becomes crucial. Anyone can fight, but true greatness requires thinking. According to the Frankish chronicles, Ragnar did attack. He chose one bank of the river, the weaker one, and launched an assault. His warriors stormed ashore. They overwhelmed the Frankish defenders on that side. They captured the fortifications. And then Ragnar did something calculated to terrify. He took the Frankish prisoners and hanged them within sight of the city. Not out of cruelty, though it was undeniably cruel, but to send a message, to show what resistance would cost, to make the defenders afraid. The psychological effect was profound. The Franks on the other side of the river, watching their comrades hanged, lost heart. The idea of fighting these savage warriors became terrifying. King Charles faced a choice: continue fighting and watch his army destroyed, or negotiate. The practical man, he chose negotiation. He sent emissaries to Ragnar. What would it take for the Vikings to leave? To go home and not attack Paris? Ragnar's answer was simple: 7,000 pounds of silver and gold. An enormous sum, the equivalent of years of tax revenue. Charles agreed. He gathered the treasure. His nobles contributed. Churches gave up their silver. The population was taxed heavily, but the ransom was raised. On a spring day in 845, the treasure was loaded onto carts, brought to the Viking camp. Ragnar's men counted it, divided it. The agreement was honored. And then, the fleet turned around, back down the Seine, back to the coast, back to Scandinavia, without a final battle, without storming the city, but with a victory nonetheless. The raid on Paris was a watershed moment, not just for Ragnar, but for the entire Viking Age. It proved that even the greatest cities were vulnerable, that rivers were highways for those brave enough to use them, that enormous wealth could be won, not through conquest, but through the threat of conquest. The concept of Danegeld, paying the Vikings to leave, became common. Over the following decades, English and Frankish kingdoms would pay huge sums to Viking fleets. It was expensive, humiliating for the rulers, but often cheaper than fighting. For Ragnar, the Paris raid was his crowning achievement. He had taken a massive fleet into the heart of enemy territory. He had extorted a fortune from one of the most powerful kings in Europe, and he had brought his men home wealthy and undefeated. The silver was distributed. Every man received a share. The jarls and chiefs who had contributed ships received more. Ragnar himself, as the leader, received the largest portion. He was now wealthy beyond the dreams of most Vikings. But more valuable than silver was reputation. Ragnar's name was known across Europe. In Scandinavia, he was a hero. Young boys played at being Ragnar. Warriors hoped to sail with him on future raids. In Francia and England, he was feared. A demon from the north. An unstoppable force. Christian chroniclers wrote about him, painting him as a scourge sent to punish sinful kingdoms. Yet the sagas also tell us something else about Ragnar. That success did not bring contentment, that even after Paris, he remained restless, that he was always planning the next voyage, the next adventure, as if he knew, somehow, that his fame was the only thing that would survive him, that the deeds of his life would become the stories of his death. And so, even as he aged, even as other men might retire to their estates and enjoy their wealth, Ragnar kept sailing, kept raiding, kept seeking that next horizon. Not all of Ragnar's voyages went west. The sagas speak of expeditions to the east as well, into the Baltic Sea, along the coasts of what are now Germany, Poland, and the Baltic states. These eastern expeditions were different in character. The people there were not wealthy Christian kingdoms. They were pagan tribes, Slos, Balts, people who lived much like the Vikings themselves. Raids here were less about treasure and more about slaves and trade goods. The Vikings called these people Wends, and they saw them as inferior, as legitimate targets for enslavement. This is another uncomfortable truth of the Viking Age. The Norse were enthusiastic slave traders. The word thrall, their term for slave, appears throughout their sagas and laws. Thralls had few rights. They could be bought and sold, used for labor, sometimes freed, but often not. Ragnar's Baltic voyages would have involved this trade. Coastal raids to capture people, who were then brought back to Scandinavian markets, or sold to middlemen who would transport them further, to the Byzantine Empire, to the Islamic caliphates. The slave trade was international, and the Vikings were active participants. But the Baltic voyages were also about expansion in another sense. The Swedish Vikings, the Russ, were beginning to establish trade routes that went far inland, Russian rivers, to the Byzantine Empire, to Baghdad itself. Did Ragnar participate in these eastern expeditions? The sagas are unclear. Some mention him sailing east, fighting tribes along the Baltic coast, exploring rivers. But details are scarce. What we can say is that the Viking world was not oriented only toward the west. They were traders and raiders in all directions. The Baltic, the North Sea, the Atlantic, even, eventually, the Mediterranean. And a man like Ragnar, ambitious and curious, would not have limited himself to one region. He would have wanted to see it all, to test himself in different waters, against different enemies. Imagine him then, in his middle years, standing on the deck of his ship as it sails along the Baltic coast. The sun is low. The water is calm. Ahead, smoke rises from a settlement. Another target. Another opportunity. His men are ready. They have done this countless times. The routine is familiar, but it never becomes ordinary. Every raid is different. Every battle brings risk. This is the life they have chosen. The only life many of them know. The ship approaches the shore. Oars are shipped. The keel scrapes sand. Warriors leap into the water. And once again, Ragnar leads them forward, into the unknown, into the danger, into the story that will outlive them all. Ireland in the 9th century was a land divided. Many small kingdoms. Monasteries that were centers of learning. No unified defense. Ripe for Viking expansion. The Norse established several settlements in Ireland. The most important was Dublin, founded around 841 AD as a Viking longfort, a shipfort, a base for raids, but also a trading center, a place where Irish and Norse could interact, sometimes in war, sometimes in commerce. Did Ragnar visit Ireland? The Irish annals do not mention him by name, but they record many Viking raids during this period. Ships from Norway and Denmark, warriors seeking both plunder and land. The Irish Sea became a Viking highway. From bases in Dublin and other coastal settlements, the Norse could raid into Ireland, Wales, and Western England. They could control trade routes. They became a permanent presence. The sagas speak of Ragnar's sons being active in Ireland. Ivar, Ubba, Halfdan. These names appear in both Norse sagas and Irish chronicles. They were real figures, powerful leaders who commanded fleets and armies. If we accept that Ragnar's sons operated in Ireland, it seems likely that Ragnar himself spent time there, perhaps in his later years, perhaps teaching his sons the art of raiding, showing them the opportunities the Irish Sea offered. Picture a scene in Dublin, a fortified settlement behind wooden walls. Longships pulled up on the muddy banks of the Liffey. Warehouses full of trade goods, silver, slaves, furs, amber, goods from across the Viking world. Ragnar walks through this settlement. He is older now. His beard is gray. but his presence still commands respect. Men step aside, bow their heads. This is Ragnar Lothbrok, the man who raided Paris, the most famous Viking of his age. He meets with other jarls, discusses strategy, where to raid next, how to deal with Irish kings who are growing more organized in their resistance, how to maintain control of the trade routes that make Dublin profitable. But even here, surrounded by success, there is a restlessness in Ragnar, a sense that his greatest adventures might be behind him, that he is becoming an administrator, a businessman, when he always saw himself as a warrior. This tension between the glory of youth and the realities of age is a theme in the sagas. Many heroes face it. The question of when to stop, when to accept that one's days of raiding are over, when to pass the torch to the next generation. But Ragnar, according to legend, was not ready to stop. Not yet. He had one more voyage in him, one final adventure, and it would be his last. North of England and west of Norway lie the islands. The Hebrides, the Orkneys, the Shetlands, windswept, but strategically valuable, and perfect for Viking settlement. The Norse colonized these islands extensively. They displaced the native Picts. They established farms, built settlements, created a Norse culture that would last for centuries. Even today, these islands retain Norse place names, Norse cultural influences. The Orkneys became particularly important, a base for raids on Scotland and northern England, a stopping point for voyages between Norway and Iceland, governed by powerful Norse earls who owed nominal allegiance to Norway but operated with considerable independence. Did Ragnar sail to these islands? Again, the sources are ambiguous, but it would be strange if he did not. They were central to the Viking world of his time. Any ambitious Norse leader would have wanted to establish connections there. Imagine Ragnar's fleet sailing among the Hebrides, the islands rising from the sea like the backs of sleeping giants, rocky cliffs, small sheltered bays, seals basking on rocks, seabirds wheeling overhead. These waters are treacherous. Currents and tides can be fierce. Hidden rocks lurk beneath the surface. The weather changes constantly. Fog can descend without warning. Storms appear out of nowhere. But the Vikings mastered these waters. They learned every rock, every current, every safe harbor. This knowledge was passed down, memorized, essential for survival. In one bay, Ragnar's fleet takes shelter from a sudden storm. The wind howls. Rain slashes horizontally. The ships strain at their anchors. Men work constantly to keep them from being driven onto the rocks. Ragnar stands at the bow of his ship, rain plastering his hair to his skull, cloak whipping in the wind. He watches the storm with the calm of someone who has survived 100 such storms, who knows that rage and worry will not change the outcome. Only skill, preparation, and luck. The storm passes. As quickly as it came, the clouds break. Sunlight streams through. The sea, so violent moments before, begins to calm. The ships ride more easily. The crisis is over. This is the reality of Viking life at sea. Not constant battle and glory, but the endless struggle with the elements. The sea gives, and the sea takes away. A good captain knows this, respects it, never becomes too confident. The fleet continues, island to island, sometimes raiding, sometimes trading, sometimes simply exploring, looking for new settlements, new opportunities. This is the age of expansion, and men like Ragnar are at its forefront. Some sagas speak of Ragnar sailing far to the north, to the lands of the Sami people, to the edges of the Arctic. Whether these tales are true or exaggerations, they tell us something about how the Vikings saw their world. The north was mysterious, dangerous, the land of the midnight sun in summer, perpetual darkness in winter, where reindeer roamed in vast herds, where the aurora danced in the sky, where the old gods seemed closer, more present. The Sami were not Vikings. They were a different people, herders, hunters, shamans. The Norse traded with them, sometimes fought them, but also respected their knowledge of the northern lands. Luxury goods came from the north. Furs, especially the pelts of Arctic fox and bear, walrus ivory, amber, down from eider ducks. These could be sold for high prices in the markets of Europe. So expeditions north were profitable, but they were also deeply challenging. The cold, the darkness, the isolation. Imagine Ragnar's ship sailing along the Norwegian coast, far north of the Arctic Circle. It is summer. The sun never fully sets. It circles the horizon, casting strange golden light across the water. The mountains rise directly from the sea. Beautiful. Forbidding. The crew is uneasy. Some have never been this far north. The strangeness of the endless daylight unsettles them. They see shapes in the water. Whales. Seals. Strange fish. One man swears he saw a mermaid. Others laugh. But nervously, they make landfall at a Sami camp. Reindeer skin tents. People dressed in furs. A different language. But trade is universal. The Norse have iron goods. Weapons. Tools. The Sami have furs. Dried meat. Knowledge of the land. Negotiations proceed. Through gestures. A few shared words. Perhaps an interpreter who speaks both languages. Goods are exchanged. The Norse leave richer. The Sami have tools that will make their lives easier. This is another side of Viking activity. Not just raiding, but trade. Exploration. The gradual expansion of their world. Ragnar, for all his reputation as a warrior, would have understood the value of trade, of relationships with distant peoples, of goods that could be sold for profit in southern markets. But the North also held dangers. Even in summer, could trap a ship, or crush it. The cold water would kill a man in minutes if he fell overboard. Navigation was difficult with landmarks so sparse. Getting lost meant death. The fleet eventually turned south, back toward familiar waters. The expedition has been successful, but Ragnar is aging. He feels it. The cold bothers him more than it used to. His joints ache. His breath comes harder after exertion. How many more voyages like this can he make? How many more seasons? These thoughts trouble him. A warrior's life is glorious, but it is also finite, and Ragnar knows his time is growing short. The sagas tell us that Ragnar had several wives, and many sons. The most famous of these sons were Ivar, Halfdan, Bjorn, and Sigurd. These names appear in both Norse sagas and English chronicles. They were real, historical figures. Unlike their father, whose existence is debated, the sons of Ragnar are documented. Each son had his own character, his own strengths. Ivar was called the Boneless, a nickname whose meaning is debated. Perhaps he had a physical disability. Perhaps it referred to his flexibility in battle, or his cunning. Ivar became a great military leader, brilliant, ruthless. He would lead the Great Heathen Army that conquered much of England. Ubba was a fierce warrior, strong, direct. Where Ivar used cunning, Ubba used force. He died in battle in Devon, fighting against Saxon forces. A warrior's death, the kind the Norse honored. Halfdan was a leader and conqueror. He ruled in Northumbria for a time, established Norse control over much of northern England. He died in battle in Ireland, still seeking new conquests even after achieving so much. Bjorn was called Ironside for his prowess in battle. The sagas say he led raids into the Mediterranean, to Spain, Italy, even North Africa. Whether all these tales are true, we cannot know. But Bjorn certainly became a powerful leader, a king in his own right. Sigurd bore the mark of the serpent, called snaking, because, according to legend, he had a peculiar mark in his eye that looked like a snake biting its own tail. He too became a king, ruled in Denmark. These sons, more than Ragnar's own deeds, may be his true legacy. They conquered, they ruled, they changed the map of Europe. The Great Heathen Army they led fundamentally altered English history, created the Danelaw, made the Norse a permanent part of the British Isles. But in their youth, they were simply sons, learning from their father, sailing with him, fighting alongside him, absorbing his lessons, his strategies, his ambitions. Picture a scene on the practice field, outside Ragnar's hall, somewhere in Denmark. His sons, still young, train with weapons. Ivar, clever even as a child, watches how the others fight. He looks for patterns, weaknesses. He does not have the physical strength of his brothers, but his mind is sharp. He learns to compensate, to use leverage, timing, psychology. Bjorn is the opposite. Strong, aggressive. He attacks with overwhelming force, practices tirelessly with sword and axe. He will become the warrior his brothers call upon when brute strength is needed. Ragnar watches them, corrects their stances, shows them techniques he learned through decades of fighting. How to read an opponent, how to conserve energy in a long battle, how to turn defense into attack in a single motion. But more than technique, he teaches them strategy, how to plan a raid, how to gather intelligence about a target, how to choose ground for battle, how to know when to fight and when to negotiate, when to show mercy and when ruthlessness is required. He tells them stories of his own voyages, the raid on Paris, the battles in England, the storms survived, the treasures won, but also the mistakes, the raids that failed, the men lost unnecessarily. He wants them to learn from his experience, to be better than he was. Most importantly, he teaches them reputation, how a name carries power, how fear is a weapon as sharp as any blade, how the stories told about you can open doors or close them, how everything a leader does becomes part of his legend. Men must know you are strong, he tells them, but also that you keep your word. Fear without respect creates only temporary power. Respect without fear invites challenge. You must balance both. The sons listen. They absorb. They argue sometimes. Ivar especially likes to debate his father's tactics, to suggest alternatives. Ragnar allows this, even encourages it. He knows that blind obedience creates poor leaders. His sons must learn to think for themselves. As they grow older, the sons begin to accompany Ragnar on raids, first as observers, then as warriors, eventually as subcommanders, leading parts of the fleet, making their own decisions, and Ragnar watches them develop, feels both pride and something else, a recognition that they are becoming what he was, and perhaps, hint him, they will surpass him. This is both satisfying and melancholy, the natural order, but also a reminder of mortality. As the sons mature, tensions develop. This too is natural. Each is ambitious. Each wants to lead, to have his own fleet, his own victories, his own fame. They begin to operate independently. Ivar takes a fleet to Ireland. Bjorn sails for the Mediterranean. Abba raids in Wales. They are spreading out, creating their own legends. No longer just Ragnar's sons, but leaders in their own right. Ragnar watches this with mixed feelings. Pride, certainly. His legacy is secure. His sons are becoming famous, but also a sense of loss. The family is fragmenting, each son pursuing his own path. They will cooperate when necessary, but they are also rivals, each wanting to be remembered as the greatest. This is the paradox of successful leadership. Raise strong sons, and they will not be content to remain in your shadow. They will seek their own glory. This is good. This is what they should do. But it also means the end of unity, the beginning of separate dynasties. Some nights, in his hall, Ragnar drinks mead and thinks about this. His wives are gone, dead or divorced. His sons are scattered. He is wealthy, famous, powerful, but also alone in a way he was not when younger. The hall is full of warriors, retainers, but they are not family. They serve him out of loyalty and self-interest. If he shows weakness, some would leave. This is the nature of Viking society. A chief must constantly prove his worth, and Ragnar is growing old, still strong, still capable, but the years accumulate. Wounds that never fully healed ache in cold weather. His reflexes are slower, his endurance less. He can still fight, but for how much longer? He thinks about legacy. What will be remembered? The raid on Paris, certainly. His sons, absolutely. But what else? Has he achieved enough? Or is there one more great deed waiting? One final adventure that will cement his place in history forever? This question haunts him, drives him. Even as his body begins to fail, his ambition remains. He cannot be content to retire, to sit in his hall and reminisce about past glories. He is Ragnar Lothbrok. He must keep moving forward, keep seeking the horizon. And so, as the sagas tell us, he plans one more voyage, one final raid, a decision that will lead to his doom, but also to his immortality. The exact details vary depending on which saga you read, but the essential story is consistent. Ray, in his later years, decides to raid England again, not with a massive fleet this time, just 2 ships, a small force. But the reasons given in the sagas are complex. Some say it was pride, a desire to prove he could still succeed even with limited resources, to show that Ragnar Lothbrok was still the greatest Viking, that he did not need armies to achieve victory. Others suggest it was a test for his sons, to see if they would avenge him if things went wrong, to force them to unite, to give them a cause that would transcend their rivalries. Still others think it was simply the restlessness of a warrior who cannot stop being a warrior, who would rather die in battle, seeking glory, than fade away in peaceful obscurity. Perhaps all these reasons are true. Human motivation is rarely simple. Ragnar was a complex man, driven by pride, ambition, a need to prove himself, a desire for his name to endure. All these forces pushed him toward this final decision. His advisors argue against it. 2 ships, 100 men perhaps. This is not enough for a major raid. If they encounter resistance, they could be overwhelmed. Better to wait, to gather a larger force, or to send his sons. They are young, so let them take the risks now. But Ragnar dismisses these concerns. He has raided England many times. He knows the lands, the weak points. 2 ships are enough for a swift raid, in and out before serious resistance can be organized. And he will target Northumbria, a kingdom in turmoil. Weak leadership, perfect for exploitation. His sons hear about this plan. Some offer to join him, to bring their own ships, to make it a family expedition. But Ragnar refuses. This is his voyage, his decision, his glory to win or his fate to face. And so, on a spring morning, 2 longships are prepared. Warriors volunteer for the expedition. Not the youngest and most eager, but experienced men. Veterans who have sailed with Ragnar before, who trust his judgment, who believe that even a small raid led by Ragnar Lothbrok will succeed. Supplies are loaded, weapons checked. Families say goodbye, some with confidence, others with foreboding. The omens have been unclear. Some seers have warned against this voyage, but Ragnar ignores them. He has never let superstition rule his decisions. The ships push off from the shore. Oars bite the water. The familiar rhythm begins. And Ragnar stands at the prow of his ship, the wind in his face. The sea ahead. This is what he was born for. This is where he belongs. He does not know it yet, but this voyage will be his last. The seas are about to teach their final lesson. And Ragnar Lothbrok is about to become legend. The crossing of the North Sea starts well enough. The weather is fair. The wind favorable. The ships make good progress. Ragnar's men are in good spirits, singing rowing songs, joking, confident in their leader and their own skills. But the North Sea is treacherous. Weather changes quickly. What starts as a pleasant voyage can become a nightmare in hours. On the second day, clouds appear on the horizon. Heavy. Moving fast. The wind shifts, begins to strengthen. Ragnar watches the sky with growing concern. He has seen storms before. Many storms. But something about this one feels different. Dangerous. He orders the sails lowered. It is too risky to rely on wind in a storm. Better to use oars. To have control. The men comply. They see the clouds too. They know what is coming. The storm hits with fury. Wind that seems to come from all directions at once. Waves that tower above the ships. Rain so heavy it is hard to see from bow to stern. Thunder that sounds like the gods themselves are at war. The ships are thrown about like toys. No matter how skilled the crew, no matter how well built the vessel, the sea is stronger. The Vikings have a saying, the sea takes what it wants. And today, the sea is hungry. Water pours over the sides. Men bail frantically, but more keeps coming. The ship sits lower, heavier, in danger of being swamped. Ragnar grips the steering oar, tries to keep the bow pointed into the waves. If the ship turns broadside, it will capsize. He shouts orders, but his voice is lost in the wind. Men can barely hear him. They work on instinct, on training, on desperation. A wave larger than the rest rises ahead. A wall of water. The ship climbs. The bow points at the sky. For a moment they are balanced on the crest. Men cling to whatever they can. And then, the ship plunges down the other side, into the trough. The impact is tremendous. Wood creaks, protests, but holds. Another wave, and another. Hours pass. Or perhaps only minutes. Time loses meaning in a storm. There is only the immediate, the next wave, the next moment. Survival measured in seconds. And then, something breaks. Not on Ragnar's ship, but on the second vessel. The mast, snapped by the wind. It crashes down across the deck. Men scramble to cut it free. But the rigging is tangled. The fallen mast acts like an anchor, pulling the ship sideways. Ragnar watches in horror. His second ship is turning broadside. The next wave catches it. The ship rolls, capsizes. Men spill into the water. Their screams are lost in the storm. There is nothing Ragnar can do. In these seas, to try to rescue them would doom his own ship. He watches them disappear, 50 men, friends, warriors who trusted him, gone in moments. His own ship survives. Barely. As the storm finally begins to ease, Ragnar takes stock. Half his force is gone. Many of those remaining are injured. The ship is damaged, leaking, limping. They make landfall on the English coast, but not where they intended. The storm has driven them far off course. They do not know exactly where they are, only that they are in England, in enemy territory, wounded, weakened, vulnerable. The ship is dragged onto a beach. Men collapse, exhausted. Some are injured from the storm. All are demoralized. They have lost friends, lost half their number before even beginning the raid. This is a disaster. But Ragnar, even in defeat, thinks tactically. They cannot stay on the beach. They need to find shelter, supplies, and they need to figure out where they are, what forces might be nearby. They move inland, cautiously. This is enemy territory. They are far too few to fight a real battle. Their only advantage is surprise, mobility, the ability to strike and vanish before resistance can organize. But their luck, already bad, gets worse. They are spotted by local farmers, who spread the word. Vikings have landed. A small group, vulnerable. Word reaches the local king, Alla of Northumbria, a man who has heard of Ragnar Lothbrok, who knows the name, the reputation, the raids this Viking has conducted over the years, and who now sees an opportunity. Alla gathers his forces. Not a massive army. He does not need one. Just enough to overwhelm a small group of wounded raiders. He moves quickly, before Ragnar can escape back to his ship, before reinforcements might arrive. Ragnar's men realize they are being hunted. They try to fight their way back to the coast, but Alla's forces are everywhere, cutting off escape routes, hurting the Vikings, driving them into a trap. The final battle is brief, brutal. Ragnar's men fight with the desperation of the doomed. They know there is no escape, no surrender, only death. And they are Vikings. They will sell their lives dearly. Ragnar himself fights in the front. Even old, even wounded from the storm, he is still formidable. His sword, his old companion through countless battles, rises and falls. Enemies fall before him, but there are too many, always too many. One by one, his men die. Surrounded, overwhelmed, fighting to the last, as Vikings should, as they were raised to do. When the battle finally ends, all of Ragnar's warriors are dead, all except one. Ragnar stands alone, surrounded by enemy warriors, his sword broken, his armor dented and bloodied. He is wounded in a dozen places, but still standing, still defiant, looking at his enemies with contempt. Alla's men want to kill him, to end it, but Alla himself stops them. He recognizes Ragnar, or at least he suspects. And if this is truly Ragnar Lothbrok, if he has captured the most famous Viking alive, then simply killing him would be a waste. Ragnar is captured, bound, dragged before King Alla. The two men look at each other, the Viking and the Saxon, each measuring the other. Who are you? Alla asks, though he thinks he knows. Ragnar could lie, give a false name, perhaps buy more time, a chance to escape. But that is not his way. He has never hidden who he is, and he will not start now. I am Ragnar Lothbrok, he says. His voice is hoarse, tired, but still strong, still proud. And you have made a grave mistake. King Alla faces a dilemma. He has captured Ragnar Lothbrok, the most famous Viking, a man who has raided English shores for decades, who has brought terror and destruction, who has humiliated English kings. Simply executing him, even publicly, does not seem enough. Alla wants to make an example, to show what happens to Vikings who attack his kingdom, to discourage future raids, to secure his own reputation as the king who finally stopped Ragnar. And so, he chooses a particularly cruel fate. Death by snake pit. A pit filled with venomous serpents. A slow, terrible death. One that will terrify anyone who hears of it. The sagas describe this scene in vivid detail. Perhaps embellished, perhaps exaggerated, but powerful nonetheless. Ragnar is brought to the pit, hands bound. He looks down at the writhing mass of snakes. He knows this is his end. There is no escape, no last-minute rescue. His story, which has spanned decades, will end here. But even facing this death, Ragnar remains defiant. According to the saga, he composes a poem, the Krakumel, a death song. He recounts his victories, his voyages, his glories. He mocks his captors. And he predicts revenge. The most famous line, the one that echoes through history, comes at the end, as he is lowered into the pit. As the snakes begin to strike, he shouts, how the piglets would grunt if they knew how the old boar suffers. The piglets, his sons, he is calling for them, predicting that they will avenge him, that his death will not be the end, but the beginning of something far worse for Aella, for Northumbria, for all of England. And then, the snakes overwhelm him. The poem ends. Ragnar Lothbrok dies. Not in glorious battle, not with a sword in his hand, but in a pit, murdered by cowards. Or so the Vikings would see it. But death is not the end of his story. It is just the transformation. From man to legend, from warrior to myth, Ragnar has achieved his greatest ambition. His name will live forever, because of what comes next.